was talking with a friend the other day, and she asked me, what do I believe will happen when Jesus comes again? And look, what I want to show you is why I don't believe in the literal fulfillment of the book of Revelation, and what I do believe about the second coming of Jesus. At the end of the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verse 1, we read, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away. Also there was no more sea." So, no more sea. How does that work? I mean, too bad if you like to eat fish. And indeed, too bad if you like to drink water. You might say that God will provide. But the thing is, God has already provided this thing we call the water cycle. And it means that none of us ever has to go without fresh, clean water to drink. How do you make a limited resource last forever? God has got recycling and sustainability worked out long before we even thought of the words. So if I don't believe in a literal fulfillment of the book of Revelation, what do I believe? Well, to show you that, I'd like to take a deep dive into some different waters, the Bible. Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 64, verses 1 and 2. "Oh, that you would rend the heavens, that you would come down, that the mountains might shake at your presence. As fire burns brushwood, as fire causes water to boil, to make your name known to your adversaries, that the nations may tremble at your presence." So let's unpack that a little bit. Oh, that you would come down. You see, the Jews look at words like this and they expect the Messiah. And they're still waiting. They're still waiting for his first coming. They have no concept of a second. And Christians say that Jesus is the Messiah, that he has come, and yet somehow they think that these words are not fulfilled. Well, let's look at the way Jesus did fulfill this passage. The mountains shake at your presence. In Matthew chapter 27, as we witness Jesus dying on the cross, and Jesus cried out with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split. And then only in the next chapter, 28, on that first Easter morning. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb, and behold, there was a great earthquake. For an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. To make your name known to your adversaries. I asked my friend, who were Jesus' adversaries, God's adversaries, at the time of the Gospels? Now she said Satan, and I can understand that that's one answer, and we can see that that was fulfilled in the temptations in the wilderness. But let's go somewhere else. John chapter 8, verses 42 and 45. Jesus said to them, "If God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Nor have I come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Because you are not able to listen to my word. You are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me." The scribes and the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, these were Jesus' enemies. These were God's enemies. And what we have to remember is that we ourselves can also be God's adversaries when we prefer our own selfish intentions or even our religious traditions over his love. As fire burns brushwood and causes water to boil. The prophet Jeremiah spoke about this. In chapter 20, verses 8 and 9, "For when I spoke, I cried out. I shouted violence and plunder, because the word of the Lord was made to me a reproach and a derision daily. Then I said, I will not make mention of him, nor speak any more in his name. But his word was in my heart like a burning fire, shut up in my bones. I was weary of holding it back, and I could not." The thing is, if we look at any passage in the Bible, none of it needs to be fulfilled literally. But all of it must be fulfilled spiritually, that is, within our own hearts and minds. So when Jesus comes again, it will not be in bodily form, magically descending from the sky. It will be when he is made manifest in human hearts. But then how can I say that every eye will see him? Well, let me ask you this. If you do believe in a literal physical fulfillment of the book of Revelation, the second coming of Jesus Christ, what do you believe is the final end result? Jesus ruling the world. Does that sound about right? An end to suffering? Perhaps. Well, here's how I think it works. When Jesus enters your life, and I mean truly enters, transforms it in such a way that you start to love everyone else around you, you cease judgment as he has commanded, then that gets noticed. Now, whether it brings admiration or derision is irrelevant, but it gets noticed and it has its effect. And one by one, as that influence spreads, and as new hearts and minds are changed, and again I mean true change, not just an intellectual assent to biblical principles, then that becomes an unstoppable force. And the thing is, Jesus is already here. He is already changing hearts and minds. Again, I'm not talking religious observance. I'm not talking about membership of my church or your church or any religion or philosophy. I'm talking about people leaving their old lives behind, making real changes. And yes, that might be leaving jail behind, it might be leaving drugs behind, but just as much it might be leaving self-centeredness behind and beginning a new, positive, forward-looking and other-focused life. So it doesn't require a calamity. It doesn't require natural catastrophes, world wars. It doesn't require disease and famine. It only takes whatever it is that brings us to our knees in recognition that we have not lived our lives in the way that we should. So the only question is, how far do we need to go to get there? How bad do things need to get before we recognize our need to change?